Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my First Doctor Top 10 Stories ranking. So I will be ranking my top 10 stories from the First Doctor's era from 1970 with Spearhead from Space through to 1974 with Planet of the Spiders. So we'll be he had about 24 stories in total, so that's cool. That's more than the second Doctor, not as much as the first, but he had more seasons, so that's also good. And they're a bit more spread out. So we'll be looking at his top 10 episodes, and yeah, but before we do, we've got dishonourable and honourable mentions first. So starting off with our dishonourable mention, and you know what, you all know this, it was going to be this one. I mean, there was only one other candidate for this spot, and I don't think it's quite hit it. I mean, it used to be one of my least favourites of all time. But now, it's still weak, but I still prefer it to the one I've got here. Just have to change the score on my top 10 stories ranking list to the score it is on my season ranking list. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so my dishonourable mention is Colony in Space from season 8. It was in competition with the Monster of Peladon, but after rewatching that, I mean, it wasn't good, but the Monster of Peladon was slightly more likeable on the recent rewatch I did for that. Colony in Space was just as boring, as uncomfortable, as annoying as usual. I mean, with the exception of the Master and some other great acting across the story, especially from John Pertwee and Katie Manning, it's not that great. The Master is easily the best character in this story, but overall, this is not very good. I think this is possibly my least favourite Master story, but I'm going to have to double check that. It's certainly my least favourite Master story of the Third Doctor's era, and of the 70s, yeah, I prefer. Deadly Assassin's the only other 70s Master story that is not a Third Doctor's one, because then after that, the next appearance is in 1980, 81 actually. So yeah, they didn't have much of the Master in the Fourth Doctor series. He was in 3 stories, and then he suddenly became crucial to the Fourth Doctor's regeneration. But more on that when we get to that, which is pretty much along this time in one incarnation's time. But that said incarnation is Tom Baker, so long way off. Still, even if it's one incarnation's time, it's still a long way off. But yeah, Colony in Space. Easily the worst John Pertwee story easily the worst John Pertwee story. And though some people may disagree and might say something else, like Time Monster or Invasion of the Dinosaurs, or maybe they'll be like, or maybe past me and say Monster of Peladon, or maybe they'll say something else. But for me, it's fucking Colony in Space, or Colony in Shit, as I like to call it. Well, that's what I don't want to watch again, and it's absolutely necessary. However, on honourable mention, this one was actually a little bit difficult to choose. I had a couple of episodes around here in the top end of the top 10 list that I was wondering, what should I decide? And we're coming down to the last couple ones. I'm going, should it be Time Warrior? Should it be Planet of the Daleks? Should it be Planet of the Spiders? I decided it couldn't be Planet of the Spiders because Time Warrior is better than that, because I put that higher on my season 11 ranking. So it's down between Time Warrior and Planet of the Daleks, both of which had previously been on the top 10 list until some of the other stories that are now on that list were better. And also the same would be said for Ambassadors of Death, which is another one which I considered for honourable mention. In the end, I decided I'm going to be nice to this season, because not any of these stories from this season are in the top 10 list anymore. They've all been knocked out. This is the only story from this particular season on this list, and it's not in the top 10. So I thought, well, I've only just realised that, actually. Let's be nice and say The Time Warrior from season 11. Yeah, The Time Warrior was good, but it was not as good as I remember it. I liked it more on more on the previous viewings than I did on the recent rewatch for the review. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing. It was still good. It had some good moments, some entertaining stuff, but on the whole, not amazing. It was still good enough to be the best story of the season, but it's not good enough to be in this top 10 list, as opposed to a couple of stories that I actually liked more on this recent rewatch and enjoyed more and have gone up in certain places, or even joined the list. So, with those out of the way, let's get on to the top 10 list itself. Starting off with number 10 is The Green Death from season 10. So, The Green Death. This one is a pretty good story. It's got some interesting stuff. The political message is down. It's pretty strong and not in your face, like some other political stories across the show, both classic and New Who. But this one is one of the ones that does it a bit more subtly, even though it's pretty obvious of what it's trying to say. So it's kind of that awkward middle ground, but it still pretty much works, and it doesn't even take over the story. It just works pretty well with it. And it's quite good fun, and the emotional stuff's good. My only complaint about this story, my only big complaint, is some of the visual effects don't really look that great, especially in the caves. The mines, I should say. They look pretty poor. This is probably the weakest Pertwee era story with the blue screen effects. There have been other weak moments, like in The Mutants, a couple in... there was one in Planet of the Spiders that I didn't really notice on the rewatch, but I had a few other times. And there's been a few others in a couple of other stories. Day of the Daleks had to have its one's updated. But yeah, but this one was probably the worst case of a Pertwee era one, which is odd because I thought they were worse in this era than other ones, but got some Tom Baker ones that are going to be worse as well, so be careful. But yeah, Green Death, it's still a good story, got some really interesting stuff, and yeah, and it's a great way for Joe Grant to leave the series. It's really emotional stuff and has some great time. A really great time. Number 9 is the first story of Season 8, Terror of the Autons. This story introduced the Master, Joe Grant, and Captain Yates, and it's a fun story. I enjoyed it more on this rewatch. I thought it was good. It's not an amazing story like Spearhead, but I think I had a bit more fun with it than Spearhead. And it also had some great stuff, and it actually flies by pretty fast. It doesn't slow down or drag like some of the other ones. I even thought that happened with Spearhead. That was a bit of a slower story in some of my earlier viewings, although on later viewings it actually got a bit faster. Not as fast as Terror, but very close. So Terror of the Autons is probably the best paced story on this list. At least in terms of it flying by. So yeah, Terror of the Autons. And really good. And Delgado is pitch perfect from the start to the master, and he just gets better and better, even if the stories don't always get better. Okay, moving on to number 8, a story that I pretty much just mentioned in this list up, with its visual effects, and this one got its ones updated for the 2011 DVD release. This is, of course, Day of the Daleks from season 9. Yep, Day of the Daleks. This was just a fun story. Both the original and the special edition versions are fun. Of course, the special edition fixes some of the stuff from the original with better effects, some nice new scenes, and of course, Nicholas Briggs, the god of all Dalek voices, providing the voices of the Daleks, whilst we get shit ones in the original, easily the worst Dalek voices. I mean, I'm not so keen on the ones from the TV movie, but they're only there for 3 seconds. We've got 4 episodes of these Dalek voices. And the same could be said for Frontier in Space. Yes, we got some really shit ones from Michael Wisher, who would go on to do better Dalek voices in his next 2 Dalek stories. But in Frontier in Space, something was wrong with the microphone and it just sounded off. But that was only the last 8 minutes of that story that the Daleks appeared in that. So the one good thing about them only being in the last 8 minutes of Frontier in Space is that that's the only time you get to hear those Dalek voices. And if they were better Dalek voices, then then the problem's even bigger. Of not the Dalek voices being bad, but the problem of them not being in much of Frontier. But we got 4 episodes of these shit voices. So thank fuck for the special edition making Nicholas Briggs do them. Thank goodness. But besides some issues, the story is for the most part, it's great, and it's a fun, enjoyable one. It doesn't go as fast as Terror of the Autons, but it's still a pretty entertaining ride and goes by quick enough. So yeah, Day of the Daleks, it's a pretty good story. But the special edition version is better, even though it cuts a couple scenes. And I was thinking, it didn't need to cut those scenes. You could have made it a little bit longer. Come on, guys. But I would have been okay with it cutting some of those scenes if it had kept in one bit that they did cut. And yeah, and because of that, because it was the line where an Oberon in part 1 said no complications. He did it so brilliantly that I was a bit annoyed when that bit was cut from the special edition. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to cut stuff out, don't cut that bit out, because that was great. Otherwise, just keep the original bits, but update it a little bit and add those new bits in. You can let it be a little bit longer. Go on, guys, come on. But never mind. Besides that, Day of the Daleks, still good stuff. Number 7. Number 7 is another Season 10 story that is pretty much, of anything, lots of fun. This is one of the more entertaining stories. It's not a fast-paced one, but it's still a lot of fun and really enjoyable. And it is Carnival of Monsters. For a bit, this one did go down in my opinion. I used to really enjoy it. Then it went down a little bit, and then on the rewatch, I just enjoyed it a lot more again. I mean, there isn't a huge amount of story for this one, but in this one's case, that works. In fact, when they do try to put a story in, it doesn't quite work with the brother of the ruler of the Greyskin aliens planet trying to overthrow him. And yeah, just that subplot didn't work for me. So I just preferred just to see the visual scope things. The people would just come to this planet and show the aliens this thing, and the Doctor and Joe being inside that thing and then finding a way out. That was the most fun bits. The stuff about the Greyskin aliens. I mean, it's nice to get to know a bit about the species, I suppose, but the stuff that we do learn isn't that great. It's not that interesting, but it's still not terrible. It's good. It's done well. It's just a bit pointless and a little bit not needed. Besides a little bit of world building. This one was also by Robert Holmes, and this might be the second weakest story. No, Terror of the Autons is weaker. Have we got his other stories on here? What else did he write? He didn't write one in season 9. Yes, no, he didn't. Okay, this is his second strongest season. Okay, this is Robert Holmes' second strongest story pre-Tom Baker. So, wow, okay, so, yeah, he's still got a couple of kinks to iron out before he gets to Tom Baker, but I can assure you all that one of my favourite stories of all time will be his first Tom Baker story. So we'll be getting to that very soon. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Then again, it could go down the same way as another one of these, one of my favourite stories, which we'll be getting to later on this list. But yeah, you know what, Carnival Monsters, fun, enjoyable. It's good. If you want to just chill out, put on a Doctor Who story, 4-part classic series adventure for 100 minutes or so, an hour and 40 minutes, then this is a good one to go for. You don't really need to think that much. You just have to watch the Doctor and Joe going through this miniscope and just have a good time. So yeah, this is a good one for just chilling out, watching a 1 hour 40 minute story. Yeah, not 140 minutes. That's closer to a 6-part. That's 2 hours 20. Anyway, so yeah, Carnival Monsters, good one to watch on a lazy, let's say a lazy Sunday afternoon. Lazing on a sunny afternoon. Except that could be any day, and I said Sunday. For example, but it doesn't have to be Sunday, it could be any day. I watched it on when did I watch it? It was, it wasn't a Sunday, it was a day. Might have been a Monday. And I think Planet of the Daleks was, I think Green Death was a Thursday, Planet was Wednesday, Frontier was Tuesday. Yeah. I think it was a Monday. Yeah, I think it was Monday. Yeah, I think it was a Monday that I watched it. Anyway, after all that, moving on to number 6. Number 6 is a story. It was one of my first classic stories that I watched on DVD, and one of the earliest classic stories I've ever seen. And in fact, no, it's the first one I saw on DVD, and one of the earliest I've seen. I saw a couple in 2007 as part of the UK TV Gold's 10 Faces of Doctor Who. 2008, they watched the last 2 episodes of the Daleks. But 2010 was really when and also I've seen some Tom Baker's in 2006. But it was really about 2010 that I actually started watching properly, besides those times. And whenever they'd been on TV, like in 2011 with The Hand of Fear, or on the horror channel, then I'd try and catch those. But since 2010, I've been getting the DVDs. And it's all started with this story and 2 others. One of which is in this Doctor's era, but not on the list. And one of them is in another Doctor's era, and may or may not be on their list. It might be, but not. No, it's not. It's not. But if it had been, it would be due to that Doctor having a lesser number of stories than 3, and the quality being weaker. Going from top to bottom. Getting better as going to top to bottom. But anyway, number 6 is Doctor Who and the Silurians from season 7. A story I liked a bit more when I first saw it a few times, but as I got more and more stories, it went down in opinion, and I gradually took less notice of it. But on the rewatch, I really enjoyed it. Despite being 7 parts, the pacing is actually really good. In fact, I think it swapped places with Ambassadors of Death, where I thought that was a really well paced, best paced 7-parter of the season. And now it's my least. Now it's my least favourite paced story. That Ambassadors of Death, least favourite of the season and the weakest paced. Whilst Silurians, whilst it's not my favourite story of season 7 or my favourite 7-parter of that season, or even my favourite 7-parter full stop, it is probably the best paced 7-parter, not just of the season, but also of all of them. I mean, the other 7-parters were the Daleks, Marco Polo, and the Evil the Daleks, and yeah, I think it's better paced than those 2. It's got a couple of fun stuff. I mean, maybe it could have been a bit shorter, but I'm fine with it as it is now than I used to be. Some good stuff. The Silurians are pretty good. The politics actually work pretty well, as does the action's also pretty great. It's got some really good moments, and some that looks pretty decent. Got to see Betty for the first time. John Pertwee, whilst I think he did a great job of Spear in Space, I think he's finding his feet. He's found his feet a little bit more since doing. I mean, he found his feet about halfway through that story. In fact, halfway through the 2nd episode. But I think he's managed to keep it going throughout this story. So yeah, I think he does a great job here, and this will continue what he has until the end of his tenure. And I think he keeps his performances pretty consistent throughout his era, by the way, which is actually really good. You can always rely on John Pertwee to deliver an amazing performance in every story, even the shit ones. And thankfully, Doctor Who Silurians is a great way to show this off in his early days. Okay, moving on to number 5. Number 5 is a story saying, whilst you've got John Pertwee, even though you've got John Pertwee and he's doing an amazing performance, it's still nice to see the other 2 Doctors back for one story, and this is The 3 Doctors from season 10. Yep, celebrating the 10th anniversary a year early. I say a year early because it was December 72 to January 73, and the anniversary was November 73. Whoops. Going back to my point of the Time Warrior being closer to the anniversary date. But, 10th anniversary season, great way to start it. And yeah, it's great to see Patrick Troughton back in the role for 4 episodes. He has a great chemistry with John Pertwee's Doctor. And William Hartnell has one great last appearance as well. Well, a couple of great appearances. And yeah, it's good. It's a really good story. I know some people aren't fans of this, but I find it great. My only real issues is that those gel guards were not needed and their designs look terrible. Whenever Omega's creating some friends to help him out, they always look up pretty awkward. But Omega does look pretty intimidating in this one. He looks better than he does in Arc of Infinity. So hopefully if they do make that K9 Time movie, which I don't know what's happening with that anymore, but if they do eventually make it, I hope it's something, an Omega more like this Omega than the Arc of Infinity one. The same can't be said for the Big Finish Audio Omega, which by the looks of it is the Arc of Infinity one again. By the cover at least. But 3 Doctors, it's a great story, great way to kickstart the 10th season. Great excuse to bring back Patrick Troughton. We've got some fun adventures. It's some really cool stuff, and yeah, it's just great. It's really fun. Ooh, itch. Number 4. Oh, we're getting into the really good stories now. I mean, I enjoyed the 3 Doctors. I thought that was great, but now we're into the really great stories. Yeah. Number 4. Number 4 is from season 8, The Mind of Evil. The Master's second appearance, and he would go on to be in every story that season, and 2 of them will not be featured in this list. But we'll get to one more afterwards, but first we're going to talk about this one and a few others. Okay, Mind of Evil is fun. I mean, it gets its time to get going, but it's got a good story, it's got a good plot, the ideas work, and unlike some other stories, it actually does all of its story ideas pretty well. It does them 1 or 2 at a time, as opposed to trying to do several at a time, and they work together really well. They have some good moments, and it's got some really great stuff, and the stuff at Dover Castle is amazing. So yeah, that's cool, and it's just really good. And Jo seems to be settled down as the Doctor's new companion and assistant in the story pretty well, and just as much as John Pertwee had settled into his new Doctor position the season before, and it's just worked really well. So yeah, that's the Mind of Evil, and it's got some creative imagery and stuff. So that's that. Number 3. Number 3 is by the same writer, and is just a little bit better than The Mind of Evil in terms of an objectiveness. I mean, subjectively, yeah, I suppose a little. I think it could have been a little bit shorter, but this story does work. Being as long as it is, the story does work at its length. And this is Inferno from season 7. This is a hugely popular story. I mean, it's not one of the ones considered the great. This is not one of the biggest and greatest, but it is one that is super popular. I mean, the biggest and greatest are ones like Tomb of the Cybermen, Spearhead from Space, War Games, Genesis of the Daleks. Actually, this one could be considered one of the greatest and the best. City of Death, Cage of Zardani, Remembrance of the Daleks, Blink, maybe the Day of the Doctor after the 2014 ranking, but I'm not sure. Heaven Sent, not Hellbent, that's considered one of the worst of the worst. Yeah, so Inferno is probably considered one of the best of the best of the best. And I can see why. I mean, I personally don't consider it one of the best of the best of the best, but I certainly consider it a very strong one. And it's got some great moments. I do get annoyed at some bits, but I do get annoyed in some of my favourite ones as well at some places. But it's okay, I'm fine in the end. And it's a really good story, and does some really good stuff. Oh, I found a new character to compare one of those characters I was talking about in my season 11 ranking, about how Chancellor Autumn used to be my go-to character example. For that, I think the professor in this story can be my new go-to example, and it might even have been him that I cheered for when he died. I mentioned in my Monster Paladin review I cheered when Autumn died, but I'm sure I cheered when somebody else died. I wasn't remembering who. I think it may have been this guy. No, I was watching with my family at the time. It probably wasn't. yeah, because the family watched half of this story with me, and Dad, all of Ambassador's death, and Mum and part of that story. Not sister, though she did watch part of Inferno. But anyway, Inferno's good story, great story, has great stuff, and yeah, it's a shame this is Liz's final story. I mean, she doesn't really go out on a bang. Like Ben and Polly, she goes out on a great story, but her exit isn't very good. She's just gone by the next one. Oh well. I think I've got a book that explains her exit upstairs, a fictional book. And that'll be a Silurian one as well. But never mind. She does get a cameo in The Five Doctors, so it's not the last we see of her. So, that's Inferno, but we're still not at the top of Season 7. Number 2 is Season 7's got 2 stories that are considered the best of the best, and we're at the other one. Number 2 is Spearhead from Space from Season 7. Again, this one has been up, down, and then up, and then maybe a little bit down again, but still pretty high. Great start for John Pertwee's story. He gets right into the role halfway through part 2. He's just got to go through a little bit of stuff in part 1, and then a bit of part 2, and then halfway through that part, from part 2, he's in it. He's gotten it. I think the same would happen with Patrick Troughton. It took him a few episodes to get into the role in Power to Dance, but by the Highlanders, he had gotten it. And I would think the same is going to happen with Tom Baker with Robot. It's going to take him an episode or 2 or 3 to get into the role, but then by the end, they'll be fine with the role, and they'll be able to take it further in the next couple of stories. John Pertwee, I think he gets it right from the middle of part 2. So, yeah, that's cool. And the story's also pretty interesting. It's not as fast-paced as its follow-up, Terror of the Autons, but it's still a really good story. It's really interesting, and it's got some great stuff in here, and it's just very interesting. And the Autons are really good. I'm disappointed we don't see them again until 2005 after these 2 stories, although, like the Ice Warriors, they were supposed to pop up in that unmade Season 23 that was replaced by Trial of a Time Lord. So, because that didn't happen, they wouldn't be able to appear again until Russell T Davies brought them in as the first monster of the new series in 2005's Rose, which is a great legacy. And yeah, so that's great. And they get to be the villains of 2 First Doctors' first on-screen adventure, or at least with Eccleston at the moment. If he does come back to the role, they may or may not do a prequel minisode or something. That would be nice, wouldn't it? But certainly, as for now, they both first monsters of 2 Doctors, and 2 of them in the 3 times tables. I haven't done it with 6, and they haven't done it with 12. Maybe they'll do it with 15. Okay, so yeah, in fact, they should come back anyway. No, don't worry for the 15th Doctor, Christian. We'll bring them back next season. Please? Thank you. So yeah, that's Spearhead from Space. Great stuff. But number 1 is a great story. I mean, my opinion kind of went down a little bit on the recent rewatch, but I still consider it one of my favourites of all time. It may or may not now be in the top 10. I mean, it was for a bit, but now maybe not. I think it's not anymore. It's not going to be. It was in my top 10 for a short while. Then I decided, no, it probably isn't that good enough to be in the top 10 anymore. I'll swap it with something else. And this story is The Daemons from Season 8. I still really like this story. I think it's a great story, and it has some great stuff going on. But I did find and I did notice this with Ollie's review, and he mentioned when he saw it that he thought that some of the Doctors saying stuff to Joe was a bit harsh, a bit rude in some cases. And I was like, what? What bits? I don't remember him doing that apart from stuff about the magic. But then I watched the episode again and I'm like, oh, now I see what he means. It kind of diminishes my opinion. It doesn't make me not like it as my least favourite. Not my favourite John Pertwee story. It's not doing that. It's not lowering it from its 10 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10 scores like Ollie's one did, and it still is my favourite Jon Pertwee story, as you can tell by now. But maybe it's lost its top 10 story list position, because you'll be surprised to know I did have the TV movie in my top 10 list, but then I thought, actually, maybe not. So everything below that's bumped up. So City of Death fans will be glad to know I like that. That's my 5th favourite story, for example. But with then this one then came in 10th, and now after the rewatch and thinking about it now, it might not even be 10th. It might go back to being 11th or 12th like it used to be. I might have to swap it with Earthshock, which is another one I really like. Delta and the Bannerman was another one I really liked, but that one might not get to 10 out of 10. I mean, I know a lot of other people don't really like that one. Jack McCulloch and Stuart Hardy, for example. So, yes, that one might not be in the top 10 either, even though I had a great time with that one. So my number 10 now of overall, I'll do a top 10 overall ranking when I'm completely finished. But at the moment, I think now the Daemons has been swapped with Earthshock. So Earthshock, that's a fantastic story. We'll get to that. Pete Davidson's era. Though now my list does seem to be having lots of Cyberman stories in it. Well, what can you do? So I think the Daemons has lost its spot in my top 10 of all time list. But I still find it my favourite Jon Pertwee story. It is great. It's got one of my favourite Master stories, and just great performances from all round. My only problems, that is what caused it to be knocked out of my top 10 of all time list, was what, as Ollie said, some of the things the Doctor said to Jo just were a bit mean. Some of them were okay, but some of them were just mean-spirited in some ways. He'd not been like this to her before. He would not be like this to her afterwards. And I'm here sitting, why this story? Why the greatest story of the era? Why is he being like this to her? I don't know. I mean, he's not bullying her or anything. It's just maybe putting her down once or twice. Just some things he hasn't been saying before, at least not since Terror of the Autons, at least. And he's just being a bit meaner to her in some cases. It's not like he's not being mean for the sake of it. It's just, I don't know, it's like Colin Baker. If Colin Baker being mean to a person, it's not outright horrible, but it's still pretty mean. It's not as mean as him strangling not strangling her, but like Colin's Doctor did, but still got some mean moments. And that's my only issue with that. There is some Doctor being mean to companion bits, but only a few times, but it does get a bit irritating. But that being said, the rest of it is amazing. So that's why the story is my number one of the Jon Pertwee stories. It's just that those few little bits just made it no longer a top 10 candidate of all top 10 all-time candidates. But it's still the best Jon Pertwee story for me. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching. I'll just do the list one more time. Number 10, The Green Death from Season 10. Number 9, The Terror of the Autons from Season 8. Number 8, Day of the Daleks from Season 9. Number 7, Carnival Monsters from Season 10. Number 6, Doctor and the Silurians from Season 7. Who came up with that title, by the way? Number 5, The Three Doctors from Season 10. Number 4, The Mind of Evil from Season 8. Number 3, Inferno from Season 7. Number 2, Spearhead from Space from Season 7. And number 1, The Daemons from Season 8. Again, still my favourite Jon Pertwee story, but due to it being great, amazing, it's just that those little nitpicks in that story, whilst not enough to knock it out of my favourite Third Doctor story spot, it was enough to knock it out of my top 10 of all time list. And therefore it's just maybe top 10, top 20 it might still be, top 15 even, but maybe even top 12. Top 11 possibly, but not top 10 anymore. So that's a shame. And yeah, it only became a top 10 story because I took the movie out anyway. So yeah, I think my new top number 10 is Earthshock. So yeah. Anyway, so that's it from me. Thank you for watching. So the next Doctor Who video on this channel should be Robot, my review of that, of Tom Baker's first story. And I will have to say it is probably the weakest Doctor's post-regeneration story of the first 4. Doctors. Of the first 4 Doctors, it is the weakest of the post-regeneration stories, but they're going to get weaker afterwards. So I think we're going down from Power of the Dalek. No, I think Spearhead in Space is better than Power of the Daleks. But afterwards, we're getting weaker and weaker until we get to the new series, movie excluded. But yeah, so the remaining classics who post-regeneration stories are going to get weaker and weaker and weaker, and then we get the TV movie, and then from that point onwards, the post-regeneration stories are much better. Same can't be said for the regeneration ones themselves, though, after Bad Wolf at least. But before TV movie, they do get weaker. Actually, no, not Case of Androzani. That's amazing. And that's a Rob Holmes story as well. Just like Spearhead. So, anyway, that's it from me. Thank you for watching. Next time, Robot review. And, yeah, goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Well, it's time. No, we'll just start with a reaction. Okay, come on. FYI, Colony in Space was from season 8, by the way. Okay, go back and add that in. Yeah, the Time Warrior wasn't very... Fuck, that's not right. Itchy saliva gland or whatever it's called. Inside my mouth. Well, we've just had Jo's first story, now we've got her final story. Number 9 is... Fuck. Laid... Oh, fuck, I forgot to say from seasons... It goes on a good, goes out on a great story, like Ben and Polly, but I like those two characters, and it's not being like not my least. It's still my least. Excuse me. Number 10, Terror of the Autons. Number 9, The Green Death. Number 8, Day of the Daleks. Number 7, Carnival Monsters. Number 7, that was number 7. Number 7, Carnival Monsters. Number 6, Doctor Who and the Silurians. Number 5, The Three Doctors. Number 4, Actually, I'm going to do it again. Whilst not enough to not make it my whilst not enough to not make it my favourite story. I talked too long during this one.